So the philosophy of Moorish holy, as the National Grand Sheikh always tells us, is chapter, verse, and its paragraph. You know, one thing we don't do with the Prophet Noble Drew Ali's demonstration and doctrine is freestyle. You know, as it relates to what Noble Drew Ali brought in the overall movement, we got to understand he started a civic organization first. Then he transferred it or converted it to a religious organization. He did that because under the civic organization, he was under the laws of the state of Illinois, which means that it put the organization under the jurisdiction of the state, which a lot of Moorish Science temples are now, where they got to report to the Secretary of State every year. But if you got to report to the Secretary of State every year and you got convention, you got to report to your grand body every year, how you reporting to two governments? It doesn't make sense. So this is why the Prophet established a religious corporation, because through the religious corporation, we don't have to report to the Secretary of State, because the religious corporation is recognized as an autonomous entity, a self-governing entity, a self-governing locale. That's why the Prophet established what he established the way he established it. And this is why he instructed us to enforce his law, not the United States laws, not the statutes, codes, and ordinances of the city, the town, or the municipality. No, your grand body, your particular temple, your members, your officials, y'all supposed to be making and enforcing laws like Act 1 says, and like chapter 47, verse 14 instructs us to do. You know what I'm saying? The same laws that they have on their books to govern their society, we supposed to have on our books to govern our society, the same way every other religious organization or society does that's in America. And it's over, from our research, it's over 3,000 religious societies in the United States. You know, so what are we doing? What are we talking about? Subnational entity that's just like ours, right? They're a municipality. We're, if you want to use a biblical term or a theocratic term, we're a principality. You know what I'm saying? Principality is actually higher than a municipality. Our laws come from our God. You know what I'm saying? This is why religious activity is afforded the liberty that it is under the First Amendment. Other types of subnational entities are things like boroughs, towns. Matter of fact, one of the biggest subnational entities that we are on the same exact footing with is Washington, D.C. It's a district. It's not even a town. It's not even a city. It's a district, right? If we talking in terms of governmental structure, a district is not necessarily less than, but it's not the same as a town, and it's not the same as a city. You also have the Vatican, right? Even the way that they're organized here, I think they have parishes. You know what I'm saying? Those are considered subnational entities. As far as other theocratic governments, you have governments like Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, you have Tibet, you have the ancient kingdom of Egypt. Egypt was a theocracy. The ancient kingdom of Israel before Saul, you know, and the later kings and David and them, they had a theocracy in place where the government and the people were ruled by priests. Same way that Noble Drew Ali instituted. You know, our theocracy, we ruled by a priesthood, which is, we call ourselves sheiks and grand sheikesses. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same principle, it's the same concept. is no different. The way they move secularly, we supposed to move religiously. It's not rocket science. To be honest, it's very easy, very simple concept to understand if we just stop doing the foolishness. So when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali asks us, what is our religion? And the answer is Islamism. We got to understand, well, what is Islam, right? The triconsonantal root of Islam is Shin Lim Mim, which is SL and M, which when you take that back to the Hebrew Semitic language, it means completion or wholeness or peace. So the suffix ism, it means the action of or the act of, right? So it means the act of peace. You know what I'm saying? So Islamism is the act of being peaceful or being complete or at one with oneself and everything around oneself. And then when he says, is this an old time or is it the new or old time religion? And the answer is an old time religion. What he means is that this religion goes back to Abraham, right? Because when we study the Holy Quran of Mecca, Allah tells Muhammad that he's to follow the religion or the way of Abraham, right? And when we go back and we study Abraham, we learn that Abraham was taught by a man by the name of Melchizedek, who was the king and high priest of a place called Shalem or Salem, which is the original Jerusalem. So Abraham was taught by this Canaanite high priest and king, who again, Jesus is forever a priest in the order of. So when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is putting us onto this old time religion, he's taking us all the way back through all the prophets, right? All the way back to Abraham and into the Canaanite tradition. When you start studying the Canaanite tradition, who the Canaanites were and these different things, you're going to come in contact with the Most High named Elyon. Elyon is this is the name that was used by Melchizedek and Abraham when Melchizedek blessed Abraham. And, when you start studying Elyon, you start getting into the Elohim, and you start getting into the 70 sons of Elyon, and, you start getting into other things. But that's the old time religion. But as far as like us as Moors, we Muslims. So we deal with the Muhammadan degrees and the Holy Quran of Mecca. We also deal with the Holy Bible, the Injil and the Torah. And we also have our own doctrine as brought to us by our Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Conspiracy to keep this thing under wraps, because if we only knew how to really exercise our religious freedom and what Noble Drew Ali brought, we'd really be free. We wouldn't have to really worry. We wouldn't be worried about what foreigners are doing here and what the Europeans are doing and what other societies and other groups of people are doing. We'd be self-sustaining and self-sufficient in a real way. So Moors have been kind of brainwashed or tricked to follow the European sovereign citizen demonstration, which doesn't have anything to do with us, really. To the Moors that say that, I would say what I would tell our brothers in the East that say this similar thing is that that's wrong. Islam, like the Prophet said, is a very simple faith. Um, it's 5 pillars in Islam. You have the belief in one God, which we believe in. Um, you have the zakat, right? You have prayer, you have fasting, and then you have Hajj or pilgrimage. As Moorish Americans, we exercise all 5 of those pillars. You know what I'm saying? Outside of that, you know, um, there is no difference between what we do and what they do in the West. Well, in the East, the only difference is the expression. Culturally, Arabs are different, and culturally, Muhammad came at a time that was different than what we're in now. The demonstration, right, and even the Quran talks about this, how Allah gave each nation their own traditions, right, and their own ceremonies. You know what I'm saying? So with us as Moorish Americans, we have a unique type of ceremony. We don't necessarily, not, and this is not all of us. Some of us do pray the 5 prayers of Islam. You know what I mean? Some of us don't. But the tradition we were given by our Prophet Noble Drali is we stand up and hold our 7 up. We don't prostrate our 7 down, because there's a provision in the Quran which deals with praying while you're standing, and it has to do with being at war. And when you understand the history of our people and our unique situation, we still at war. So we pray standing because we never know when something might happen. That's the demonstration we was given by our Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So, although the expression is different in some aspects, we still practice the same Islam. We might not adhere to the hadith in the same way that our brothers in the East do. But, the Quran said that the Quran is the best hadith. The Quran is the best sunnah. So. Yeah, so one of the main reasons why the Prophet gave us that demonstration was because he was trying to tie us back, right? He was trying to put us back on the page with the Moabites in the tribe of Judah. So the Prophet was trying to put us back on the page with the Moabites, because the Prophet told us that the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites that inhabited the northwest and southwestern shores of Africa. Now, when you study the genealogy of the Moabites, it take you back to Lot, which is the nephew of Abraham. Now, the story of Lot and the Moabites and how they came about is very controversial, because in the Bible, when you read it, and you read it with carnal eyes, you're going to walk away with the aspect that the Moabites came about through incest. But, we do a whole demonstration on breaking that down and dispelling that whole myth, right? But when it comes to the Moabites, we got to deal with Ruth, right? So when we read that key 27 in the one-on-ones and it's breaking down and it mentions Ruth, she's the key aspect there, because Ruth was the one that tied the bloodlines together for the Moabites in the tribe of Judah. So I like to tell Moors, whenever we deal with the genealogy, and if anybody asks you, or you dealing with anybody, you bring up that we are Moors, descendants of the Moabites, you got to also tie in that we're of the tribe of Judah, right? Because that's what Ruth did. She tied us in through the tribe of Judah. And this is why the Prophet gave us the genealogy of Jesus, because Jesus, as the Messiah, has Moabite blood. He was a Moabite, right? So this is where we're able to tie into that lineage, that royal bloodline, that royal lineage. And then this also takes us back to the original founders of Morocco. Right now we're dealing with the lineage from Muhammad's side, right, through Ali and the Ahlul Bayt, because Muhammad had a cousin and son-in-law or a cousin that married his daughter, and made him his son-in-law. And those two had two children named Hassan and Hussein, right? And through that lineage, we're able to trace our lineage back from the Prophet Noble Drew Ali up to the Prophet Muhammad, because one of the descendants of Ali migrated to the Maghrib and Morocco during the I'm trying to think. It's kind of like the civil war period between the caliphates and the House of Muhammad. And so one of the descendants went to Morocco and married a Berber woman and had a lineage there. And then through that lineage, we're able to trace ourselves back through the Saadian dynasty or the Saadian dynasty. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali mentioned the Saadian Moors that were driven back into Morocco out of Spain by the Kajarites, who were the same people that assassinated Muhammad's heir, Ali, who was his cousin and son-in-law. So we as Moorish Americans, we take all of that into consideration when it comes to our demonstration and how we express Islam and embrace Jesus as the son of Allah, right? Which is, some Muslims and others would say that, that goes against the Quran, it goes against the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, X, Y, and Z. But, we reconcile that as well, because again, we're taught to follow the Bible, right? Muhammad, if y'all follow Hadith, some of y'all Muslims out there follow Hadith, Muhammad was given the Torah, and he actually said he believed in the Torah. So if Muhammad believed in the Torah, then there's certain things that's in the Torah that point to certain things in the Quran that don't match. And we deal with law, so if y'all want that demonstration and, you want a little bit more understanding on that, make sure y'all join our calls and stuff like that and tap in with us. So. Good question. So when the prophet is breaking down that all of these different nationalities are forced to proclaim a free national name and free national religion before the constitutional government in which they live, the problem with the Negro then and now is that he can't do that, right? The Negro's constitutional government in which he lives is Washington, D.C. The Negro is a 14th Amendment citizen. His allegiance is to Washington, D.C. And the Congress. And by default, the Negro can't do those things that those other nationalities can do because he doesn't know his national origin, right? In order to be a citizen of any free national government, you have to renounce this nation from which you come from. And if you're a Negro, you don't know which nation you come from. The best thing you got to go off is that you came from Africa. That doesn't qualify you enough, right? Because Africa has 50-something nations. And so that's the Negro problem. So like then, as it is now, the prophet saying that law should be applied to every citizen. So it should be applied to the Negro, but because the Negro doesn't have that reference point or that frame of mind, doesn't have the knowledge of self, of who he really is and where he really descends from, he can't properly proclaim his nationality before any constitutional government. This is why the prophet instituted the Moorish Divine and National Movement, to do for the Negro what the United States government basically said that they can't do as per their constitution, which is bestow titles and nobility. The Negro doesn't know that he's the noble of this land. So the United States, by way of their own mandate, can't tell us who we are. So the prophet had to come, institute an organization to be able to re-educate us about who we were so that we can proclaim our free national name and religion before his constitutional government. Because we are a constitutional theocracy, right? So when he's saying that the Negro, or that law should be applied to the Negro the way it is to everybody else, it doesn't mean that the Negro should go before the United States government to try to proclaim his nationality and his religion, because he can't do that. You know what I'm saying? What he meant was because that law is applied to everybody and the Negro didn't have that opportunity, we now have an organization that gives us the ability to be able to do what these other nationalities are able to do. So that's how that applies and kind of ties in, you know, from then till now. Yeah, so the Holy Quran of Mecca, like the Prophet Noble Drew Ali says, the Bible for the Muslims, right? And being that we are Moorish American Muslims, we have it as the revealed word of Allah. So in that book, in that text, there are lessons that Moors can apply, you know, even to this day. You know what I mean? One thing that the Moors like to kind of gloss over is the fact that, again, we not just a national movement, we a divine movement. And, you know, if we're returning to the state of mind of our foremothers and forefathers' divine and national creed, then that means we have to go to that Holy Quran. You know, we have to deal with the principles and, you know, the traditions and the observances that's in the Moorish in that Quran, you know, the Quran of Muhammad. A lot of Moors don't like to deal with the Holy Quran of Mecca because, you know, in some way they feel like it doesn't apply to them, right? Which is, you know, that's a fallacy. You know what I'm saying? A lot of Moors like to harp on our ancestors and the great accomplishments of the Moors of the past, and the historical Moors did this and the historical Moors did that, but they fail to like really grasp a hold of the fact that those historical Moors were devout Muslims. You know, they were devout Muslims. They expressed the principles of the Quran better than the Arabs did at some points in time. You know what I'm saying? So for Moors in this day and time to not want to master that book is it's a shame and it's a tragedy, man, because, you know, as Moorish American Muslims, you know, we say we the masters of this and the masters of that, but if we can't master what our brothers in the East have, then I don't really think we can consider ourselves Moorish masters, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's my take on the Holy Quran of Mecca. Yeah, you know, you guys make sure y'all subscribe to the YouTube channel, World Moorish Holy. If you're not following us on Instagram, make sure you follow us on Instagram. Make sure you click the link in the bio, you know, make a donation, support the cause. If you guys are interested in joining the organization, make sure you contact myself, or, you know, use the link in the bio to get in contact with us, fill out the application form. We'll get in contact with you, set up an interview, and get you rolling and get you going, man. That's all I got, man. Peace.